Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the 25 SAT Math Concepts Summary videos. And today we are going to revise absolute values. We will see what are absolute values and what type of concepts can be tested from absolute values, and we'll do a couple of practice problems. So here are the four concepts that can be tested from absolute values. First of all, you should know what is the graphical interpretation of absolute values. Then we have absolute values equations, absolute values inequalities, and absolute values compound inequalities. Alright, so first of all, let's understand what actually it means when I say that, if I'm saying that absolute value of x is equal to 3. So these vertical bars that you see, they represent the absolute values. Whatever is inside these vertical bars, that means we are talking about absolute value of that thing, whatever is between these two vertical bars. So when I say that absolute value of x is equal to 3, theoretically you might know that in this case x is equal to positive 3 and negative 3. But you should also know what does it mean. This is not negative b, negative 3. You should also know that what does it mean graphically, because it's not necessary that the SAT will test you only on the theoretical knowledge that okay, if you know absolute value of x is equal to 3, then x is equal to positive 3 or negative 3, but you should also know its graphical interpretation. So when I'm saying that absolute value of x is equal to 3, what this actually means is that x is a number whose distance from 0 is 3. So if here I have 0, now I have to take a number on this number line. Let's say this is a number line and here is 0. I have to take this number such that its distance from 0 is equal to 3. So now you can say that okay, my x can be at positive 3. So this can be x because, well, distance of 3 from 0 is 3. And since we are talking about the distance can be measured from both the directions. So if I take the point negative 3, well, distance of negative 3 from 0 will be also 3 because distance can be only positive. So my x can be here as well, and that's why you get positive and negative 3 both. So having this understanding is really crucial when you're learning about absolute values. So this is the graphical interpretation of absolute values. Now we have absolute values equations. So this was a very simple equation that I just solved. Absolute value of x is equal to 3, and we have to find the value of x. So x can be either 3 or negative 3. This was the simplest absolute value equation, but you can also get some complex absolute value equations. For example, here we have a practice problem. For what value of x is absolute value of 3x minus 5 equals to negative 1? So it's very simple. Now I'm just gonna show you how you have to solve absolute value equations. Now in this case we see that for x we got two values, positive 3 and negative 3. So in every absolute value equation you're gonna get two answers, okay? One will be positive and one will be negative. So whatever you have on the right hand side, so on the right hand side we have this 3. So you will make two cases, case 1 and case 2. In the first case you will write positive 3, and on the second case you'll write negative 3. So what I mean by that is, now when you have to solve this equation, you will make two cases, case 1 and case 2. Now in the first case, whatever you have inside, so first remember that you have to get rid of these absolute values. And how you can get rid of these absolute values is, well, you I will tell you something about absolute value function. If you have absolute value function f of x, which is given by absolute value of x, and this is equal to a, then your x can be either positive a or it can be negative a. Okay, so these are the two cases that we'll make. Now we will remove the absolute value, so we'll get 3x minus 5. So this will be equal to whatever you have on the right hand side. First write that, and in the second case 3x minus 5 is equal to negative of whatever you have on the right hand side, so negative of negative 1. Now you will just simply solve these two equations. So I can add a 5 on both the sides, so I get 3x equals negative 1 plus 5. Here I get 3x equals, well, negative of negative 1 becomes positive 1 plus 5. So I get 3x equals 4 or 3x equals 6. X equals 4 over 3 or x equals to 6 over 3. 6 over 3 is nothing but 2. Okay, so here in these options we do not have positive 2 or neither we have 4 over 3. So the correct answer choice is there is no such value of x, at least not in the given options. So this is how you are going to solve the absolute value equations. Second thing I also want to talk about the graph of absolute values. Graph of absolute value function. Okay, so your absolute value function, now the thing is, if your x is a positive number, then when you remove the absolute value symbol, you will simply get x. And if your x, so this is the case when x is a positive number, and if your x is a negative number, then you will get negative x, because this function, whatever you input inside absolute value function, it makes it positive. So absolute value of, let's say, negative 10 is gonna be 10, and absolute value of negative 100 is gonna be equal to 100. Why? Because here I'm talking about what is the distance of negative 10 from 0? Well, it's positive 10. What is the distance of negative 100 from 0? Well, it's positive 100. So in order to, so how this negative 10 is becoming a positive 10? Well, if you have to make a negative number into a positive number, then you have to multiply it by negative 1. So if I multiply negative 10 by negative 1, I'll get a positive 10. And if I multiply negative 100 by a negative 1, I'll get a positive 100. So that's why whenever you have a negative number, whenever your x is negative, you have to multiply it with negative 1. And that's why you get negative x here. And now since you have this relationship, we can easily draw the graph of absolute value function. So if these are my x and y axis, and this function is defined as, if your x is positive, that means if your x is on the right hand side of the y axis, then this is just x. So this is the function y equals x, which is this line. Y equals x is this line. And if the x values are less than 0, that means if there is any number which is on the left hand side of y-axis, then your graph will be y equals to negative x. So in that case, your graph will look like this. And what happens when x is equal to 0? That means what is the distance of 0 from 0? Well, it's just 0. So when x is equal to 0, you'll just get x. So I can put an equality symbol here. Okay, the reason I'm telling you about the graph of absolute value function is because on SAT Math, you can expect questions of easy level, medium level, and hard level. If you get an easy level question, you'll be just asked to solve an absolute value equation, but if you get an difficult level question, then it will be definitely from the graph of absolute value function. Okay, so we have done absolute value equations. Then there is absolute value inequalities and compound inequalities. So the next concept that we have is absolute value inequalities. Now, I'm going to club the two concepts, the third one and the fourth one, which is absolute value inequalities and compound inequalities. So what is an absolute value inequality? It looks something like this. Absolute value, let's say absolute value of x is greater than 1. Okay, so this is an absolute value inequality and its solution. And now for inequalities can have more than one solution. So now this inequality actually contains all the x's whose distances from 0 is greater than 1. So if I have this number line where this is 0, this is 0, this is 1, this is -1, this is 2, 3, -2 and -3. Now I want all those numbers whose distances from 0 is going to be greater than 1. So for example, 2 is one such number because distance of 2 from 0 is more than 1. 3 is also one such number because distance of 3 from 0 is more than 1. So all the numbers which are greater than 1, all the numbers which are greater than 1 will be actually the solutions to this inequality. And now what about the numbers which are less than -1? Now if you have a number, let's say -2, the distance of -2 from 0 is 2, which is greater than 1, and distance of -3 from 0 is 3, which is greater than 1. So all the numbers which are less than -1, they will be also the solution to this inequality. So these numbers that I have highlighted with red color, they are all going to be the solution to this inequality. Now if I add another inequality and if I say that absolute value of x is greater than 1 and absolute value of x is greater than 4. Now I also want those numbers whose distances from 0 is gonna be greater than 4. So that means those numbers will be all the numbers which are more than 4 and all the numbers which are less than -4. But we have to find out the common solutions, common points which satisfy both of these inequalities. So the common points are going to be these guys, the points which are common in the red line and the blue line. So the solution set for this inequality is x belongs to, this is a symbol, x belongs to. So now you have two intervals. One interval is all the numbers which are less than -4. So I can write -∞ to -4. And since we have a strict inequality at 4, so we don't want -4. If this had been like this, then we would have put a square bracket here, but since we do not have equality symbol, so we are going to keep the parentheses. So all these points and all the numbers which are greater than 4, so 4 to infinity. So this is, now these two inequalities together make a compound inequality. Compound inequality. Okay, now if you ever get a question like this, for instance, if you have a question like this, so if you just had absolute value of x is greater than 1, so the solution for this inequality is x belongs to negative infinity to negative 1, all the numbers which are less than negative 1, and all the numbers which are greater than 1, so 1 to infinity. Now what about if you have absolute value of x is less than 1? So now you want all those numbers whose distances from 0 is less than 1. So that means now you want these numbers. So in this case, your solution set becomes x belongs to, what is the solution set? From negative 1 to 1. All the numbers which are between negative 1 and 1, the distance of those numbers from 0 is going to be less than 1. Okay, so this is your absolute value compound inequality. Let's do a practice problem. So here we have, if 3 over 4 times n minus 2, all of this is inside absolute value bars, this expression is less than 1 and n is an integer, so what is one possible value of n? Okay, so now we know that if absolute value of x is less than any number, if it's less than a, then x belongs to negative a to positive a. That's what we just saw. So here, now if I want to remove these absolute value symbols, so I'll write 3 over 4 n minus 2. All of this belongs to negative a to positive a. That means, so what does this mean? This means that x has to be greater than negative a and x has to be less than a. So you'll get two inequalities. So all the points which satisfy both of these inequalities will be the solution. So I'm going to write the same thing for this expression. So 3 over 4 times n minus 2, this should be greater than negative, sorry, here it won't be negative a to a, this will be negative 1 to 1, because here on the right hand side we have 1. So this expression should be greater than negative 1 and this expression should be less than 1. So now we can solve these two inequalities. I'm going to add a 2 on both the sides, so I get 3 over 4 n is greater than negative 1 plus 2, and 3 over 4 times n is less than 1 plus 2. Okay, so 3 over 4 n is greater than negative 1 plus 2 is 1, and 3 over 4 n is less than 3. So now we have to remember, we have to find out the value of n. So we can multiply both the equation, both sides of the inequality by 4 over 3, 4 over 3, 4 over 3, multiply by 4 over 3, multiply by 4 over 3. So this gives us n is greater than 4 over 3, and here we get n is less than 4. Okay, so now we have two inequalities. N is greater than 4 over 3, so 4 over 3 is gonna be 1 point something. We don't know how, whatever it will be, it doesn't matter because n is an integer. So we want those values of n which are going to be definitely greater than 1. And since it's an integer, so it cannot be 1, it has to be greater than 1, and the next integer after 1 is 2. Then we have 3. And we cannot have 4 because from this inequality we get n is less than 4. So the solution is 2 and 3. So one solution, they are asking about one possible value of n, one possible value is 2, or it can be 3 as well. So this question can be also asked like this, that if A and B are two possible solutions to this inequality, then find the value of A plus B. So the answer will be 5. So that's it for absolute value equations and inequalities. So most probably you'll get a question in which you'll have to solve an absolute value equation, or you will have to do something about the graph. Now again, a lot of questions can be asked in a lot of ways in this question. Well, for example, see, this is the graph of f of x equals to absolute value of x. Now you can do what will happen if you subtract a 2, then this graph will shift down by 2 units. What will happen if you add a 2? Then this graph will shift up by 2 units. What will happen if you subtract a 2 inside the absolute value? Then it will shift right by 2 units, and if you do plus 2, then it will shift left by 2 units. So this is also something that you should know, and this is a function translation. So that's it for absolute values. I think if I were at your place, I would really practice a lot of questions on absolute value equations and inequalities. And this is a really easy topic. You can easily score full points for absolute value questions, and there I can give you a personal guarantee that you're gonna see minimum one question from absolute value 100% on your SED math section. And I really don't want you to lose any points from absolute value questions. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Let me know in comments if you want me to make any video on any specific topic, or if you have any particular question that you want me to solve. So just let me know in the comments. And if you're liking this series, I would really appreciate if you could just subscribe to my channel. That way you're not gonna miss any other video, and it will also help support my work as well. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video. All the best.